We at the Planet Trillion Trees podcast are saddened by the wildfires that have enveloped the Los Angeles region. We extend our sincere sympathies to those that have lost family members in the fires. We'd like to extend a thank you to the firefighters, the volunteer workers, and all those nonprofit organizations that have stepped up to help those that are homeless. We thank you. Our podcast is here to share knowledge as Los Angeles moves forward with adapting and creating safer environments for the future. Our hearts go out to all of you from all of us here at the Planet Trillion Trees podcast. Welcome to the Planet Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Eva Monheim.
And I'm Hal Rosner. We are both certified arborists through the International Society of Arboriculture. The purpose of our podcast is to encourage tree planting and proper tree care for our urban forests, which include neighborhoods, parks, and other open spaces.
We will also cover a myriad of tree topics, including the important role trees play in relationship to the climate crisis. Thank you for joining us. The Planet Trillion Trees podcast is happy to announce that we have won 2 Garden Communicator International Silver Laurel Medal Awards for Best Podcast and Best Podcast Episode. We've also won a Garden Communicators International Gold Laurel Medal Award for a Best Podcast Episode. We'd like to thank Garden Communicators for their recognition.
Verdant Earth Educators provides dynamic in-person training and online learning opportunities for environmental and horticultural businesses. Owned by ISA-certified arborists and former university faculty, the Verdant Earth Educator team provides consultations on tree care and recommends climate-resilient opportunities for your valued green spaces. Verdant Earth Educators is all about seeding knowledge for success. Find Verdant Earth Educators at verdanteartheducators.com.
Monheim Microphones designs and handcrafts top-tier studio microphones and preamps right here in the United States in Hollywood, California. Their incredible line of innovative microphones and designs are used around the world by everyone from podcasters to top-charting record producers and singers. Monheim Microphones, unparalleled excellence. MonheimMicrophones.com. The Urban Wood Network gives people strength in numbers and a collective voice to showcase the growing environmental impact of an industry like urban wood utilization. This is really critical in a world where resource recovery and carbon storage benefits can go a long way to meet the needs of climate sustainability goals of cities, businesses, and consumers. Contact us at urbanwoodnetwork.org. This podcast is being recorded on December 6, 2024. Jay Worth started working in the green industry in college to earn money between semesters. He started mowing lawns for a landscaping company and then moved to a full-service landscaper. While attending university in Florida, he also worked on a palm tree farm and fell in love with the trees. During the Great Recession of 2009, he was recruited to sell lawn care door to door, having no other job options. He took the offer. This was the beginning of his full-time career in the green industry. Eventually, he landed at a full-service landscaping company doing inside sales for their lawn care and pest control programs. Jay got promoted to run all the marketing and grew his single inside sales position into an entire team of people. While working there, he spent every chance he got outside with the tree care team. He eventually connected with SingleOps, a software he'd used while working at one of the landscape companies. He found it to be the best option for tree care and full-service landscaping companies. So when they wanted someone to create resources for business owners, he found it was an easy product to get behind. Jay is passionate about best practices for healthy plants, sustainability, and being thoughtful stewards of the environment. Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast, Jay. We're delighted that you could be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is actually one of the podcasts that I enjoy listening to, and so I'm really honored to be on the show.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, we're delighted. Your company, the company that you work for, SingleOps, is a strategic player in helping businesses become efficient, right? And also making money, learning how to make money better. Yeah. So can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I would love to talk to you about that. We all are in the industry because we love trees and we love plants, but very few of us are in this for charity, right? We have to pay bills, and some of us run companies, or whether it's a tree care company, a full service landscaper, a growing operation. And so we all need to earn a living in some form or fashion off of this. And SingleOps is a company that I came to. Admittedly, most of my background is in turf and in landscape, but years ago, the team was growing, the company was growing, and they realized there was a big disconnect in their marketing. And so they said, hey, we need somebody who really understands the green industry. And I happened to have already been networked with the guy who was the marketing director at the time. And he said, would you be interested in coming on board and creating content for us? We need people that can write blogs. We need people that write blogs and they speak the same language. They're gonna talk the same way our customers do. And we need someone to help us internally understand the industry better so that we can create the best possible product. And so that's how I ended up here. And really what SingleOps does, especially for arborists, it works well for full service landscapers, but for arborists in particular, it's really end-to-end business management. You can, from the time a customer calls you or submits information on your website, you can walk them through the entire process. You can schedule an estimator to go look at their project. The estimator can propose the job on site in many cases, email that directly to the customer accepts it, and it goes straight to whoever you have in charge of your scheduling. Scheduler assigns a crew. The crews clock in and out in the software. They get their work orders in the software. They submit it back to the main office for a final once over, and then billing is done. I mean, it's really a pretty seamless experience for your end customer. And so it's great for companies that are growing because it allows you to professionalize your operation. And then it also saves time, it saves money, it saves paper, and it gives a good experience. I actually just had a customer the other day that I'm connected with on LinkedIn sent me a Google review they got. And the customer was so excited because the CRM that they used was so easy for them as the homeowner, as the end customer, to do everything. He said it was really seamless and efficient and professional looking, and they've got their act together as a company. But they mentioned us specific. They didn't mention SingleOps. They didn't know the name of the CRM, but they mentioned the software specifically. And I just thought that's what it's about, is if we can help people that love this industry get time back and create less waste, all good things, that's something I can get behind.
Jay, I want to do the deep dive into all issues relevant to sustainability because I saw it jump out on your wonderful website. You do have a lot of content, but we can get back to that. I noticed that SingleOps is very committed to the customer service end of things, your clients being business owners, the people out there selling the services, and then down the line with the crew and the foreman and everything like that. And I do remember in the early days going to the trade shows, and we're going back 10, 15 years, the first companies rolling out selling those services, and that the big complaint was, I can't get anyone on the phone, and the system is slow, or the system is jammed, or whatever.
Right.
And I'm sure by now, tree care owners can be pretty impatient. They're juggling a lot. They've got a lot of balls up in the air. Talk about that commitment to customer service. How is that working out when there's a little bug in the works?
Well, maybe I'm pulling back the curtain and revealing the great and wonderful Oz here, but
I'm looking at him.
Yeah,
there he is.
No, you're not. Not me. No, just so, because I have been that person that's frustrated with the software I'm using working in a green industry business. So I won't name any names. It's a very well-known software in the industry. It wasn't SingleOps. It's a very well-known software in the industry, geared more towards lawn care. And I had some massive, massive problems. And I called them multiple times in the same day and said, hey, look, I need this resolved in 48 hours. And I didn't get a call back for 6 days.
What?
Like, I've been there.
What?
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah, this is familiar.
This is common in a lot of software companies. And so one of the things that SingleOps has really, really embraced, whether or not they understand the in and outs of what type of chainsaw to use, what harnesses are more comfortable, what types of knots to use. Okay, we're not that in the weeds. Many of us, don't have, those are terms that are completely unfamiliar to a lot of people. But what they are familiar with is, here's a business owner that needs to keep their cash flow intact. Here's a business owner that needs to get proposals. They need to keep their pipeline full, right? Whatever it is, their crews can't clock in and out. That's going to affect payroll. Whatever those issues are, internally, there are people dedicated to monitoring accounts. So when there's a support complaint that comes through and it's something to do that's one of those major issues, that gets escalated right away. We actually have internal communication channels dedicated to the site health, dedicated to these types of major issues that are impacting it. And as soon as one pops up, the engineers on the back end start going in and trying to find out, is this a bug in the code? Is this affecting more than one account? Because if it's affecting one account, maybe there's some kind of setting on their end we need to resolve. But the turnaround time for SingleOps is well above the software industry standard in general. And I want to say, usually you're getting a call back same day or within 24 hours. It's really, really phenomenal in terms of the turnaround time because we understand that impacts your business. So
sure.
That's awesome.
Well, congratulations for that initiative. And as you indicated, I think your clients are satisfied for that reason.
Yeah, we get positive feedback. Now, don't get me wrong. Someone's sitting on a problem for 24 hours. They're going to be testing by the time we get back. But I tell you what, it's leaps and bounds better. It's not about us versus competitors. And I don't make my money by bashing people. I don't make my money by selling the software at all, which is great. But they understand how deeply this impacts people's livelihoods and their stress levels. And the whole company ethos is to give you that time back and to take that stress away. So that's something we've really prioritized.
I got you.
When you find a better way to do something, do you share that with your clients?
Oh, yeah. And not only that, we take a lot of time to listen. When they say, hey, it would really help if we have X, we start hearing that from a large number of clients. Then, let's dig into solving X problem, whatever that is. And what will that take in terms of an engineering, software engineering standpoint? What will that take in terms of the development? What will that take in terms of testing? How soon can we release it? We start really looking into those things when we start getting that kind of customer feedback. So I think we listen really well relative to software companies in general to what is going to improve the speed of delivery and the ease of use for our customers.
So if a client has a new job that they do on the job, and I'm thinking of all these new techniques in sustainability, like mowing edges, and instead of mowing a whole entire property, they're mowing edges. How can you fit that into your, profitability by, what would be something else that we can do to increase our?
Yeah. So when we talk about in terms of helping customers to really find a better way to do things, one of the things that we've started doing and gotten really good feedback from, and hats off to Amy Fine, who's one of our marketing managers. I think she's the events manager for SingleOps now, has really done a good job hosting thought leadership webinars. So it's not just how do you use the software to do stuff better, but we bring in tree care company owners. We bring in certified arborists, board certified master arborists, and we bring them in to host educational sessions that people can get CEUs from. It's not just, hey, here's how you use the software to do X. We understand that there are so many of our customers, whether they're a crew leader, whether they're an owner, whether they're an owner operator, their time is limited. And so if they can get in a CEU over a lunch hour, that's a big deal for a lot of them, right? And so what we do is we do that. We check, have them send us your license number, and we submit those for CEU credit, and then we run that against the guest list so that can make sure you attended, right? You can't just email Amy and say, hey, I attended the webinar.
Right.
But yeah, we even go that far. So it's not as much a matter of do we find a better way to do something and how do we incorporate that into the software, but is there a better way to perform your craft, to perform your practice? And we try to introduce people to that as well.
I really I guess this was one of the webinars, Jay, where I think it was free or fee for estimates, and your guest was a BCMA, and it made all the sense in the world.
Yeah, was that John? John Snow?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I love John.
And yeah, all those years, I have to laugh where, you're pouring out all your knowledge, all your conferences, all your webinars to an inquisitive prospective client. They're taking meticulous notes, but somehow you get the sense that you're never going to see this person again, and they've got all your information. And wow, why did I not hit you for $100 right there? In fact, make it cash. Pay me right now, because I've just told you information that you're going to share with the next tree contractor that comes on the property.
That's one of those things, right? What arborists do every day is hard. It's dangerous. And those who are really dialed in are no less an expert than a master electrician or a master plumber, right? I mean, the ones who are really practicing and continuing to learn, you're every bit the expert. So you deserve to be paid like that. Like if I call a plumber to come to my house, he's going to charge me just to show up. Why aren't you doing the same thing?
Right. Yeah. And the webinars that Amy and I guess yourself are putting on would be the portals so that a tree company that is trying to do things in the realm of sustainable practice, this is going to be their opportunity to learn something innovative and new, like how to use the air spade and how to incorporate mulch into the root zone. Maybe things they've just never thought about. And I have to say, I listened to the first half of your interview with Basil Camus right before coming on. It sounds like you just had him on. I feel like he is the inventor of arboriculture 2.0. He's seeing 50 years down the line on where this industry is going and where it has to go. So I like very much what you're doing in terms of these little things. It may not be shutting down your tree removal operation, but it can also be, having a dedicated planting crew or working with your wood chips in a recyclable, sustainable way and things like that. All those little things that are going to help our industry.
Yeah. For me, I've just over the last few years, and Eva and I talked about this before she came on the podcast as well. I don't know if you listened to her episode, Hal, go back and listen to it.
Right.
But I've really just become convinced that tree care companies, so if you're listening to this, just a little bit of context, the things they hired me to do at SingleOps was to create business resources, right? So I've written a blog series and a white paper and been published and spoken at industry conferences about recruiting and retention, employee recruiting and retention. I've spoken about change management and been published and done all those things, right? Marketing. Right. So there's all these things that I know well and that I have been involved with in my career and that I've created resources to help you on the business side. And one of those things is hosting the podcast. We have a podcast, Green Industry Perspectives. But I've really become increasingly convinced, I'll just say, because I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but sustainability and good ecological practices really are the future of the industry. If you're not beginning, get in front of the demand now, because customers are going to start demanding it, right? So if you're not in front of that, you're going to be behind just from a business perspective, let alone the fact that I think it's the right thing to do for the planet. And so one of the things I've tried to do with the podcast in particular is introduce my audience. I don't have a huge audience, but I have a very dedicated audience and a very specific audience. And these are people that can move the lever, right? These are people that are tree care business owners, full service landscape business owners. I want them to get exposed to the idea that there is a different and equally effective way of doing things that is also good for the planet. And it's going to require, for the first couple of years here, it's going to require probably lengthier conversations. Basil said something along the lines of, I've got to go out and spend more time talking people into not removing a tree so I get less money. It doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint, but it really is on the front end. You're an early adopter now. You're going to have those talking points polished by the time customers really begin to become aware of this in the marketplace. And I've only seen it increase over the last 10 years. Customers are they want native, sustainable, they want fewer pesticides, this list goes on and on. So the further you can get out in front of that now, that's why I had Eva on the show. It's why I had Basil on the show. It's why I've got, and thank you, by the way, Eva, for the introduction, Hannah Lewis. That's a great episode. I can't wait to publish that one next season, talking about Milwaukee. Yeah, it's just
awesome.
But if you're listening to this, tree people, listen to me. Please get in front of it now. You're probably in front of it if you're listening to Eva and Hal's podcast. But if you're just picking this up because I'm on the show and maybe you've never listened to their show before, go back and listen to a bunch because it's a totally worthwhile show. And it'll just help you get in the right mindset for that type of business plan moving forward.
I like the way you think. And here's something that I was thinking about yesterday. We had a drought, as I mentioned before we came onto the podcast. And I was driving by this property and I saw their arborvitae hedge totally gone. And it was old. I've been watching this for the last 12 years. And the whole thing had been ripped out, and behind it, there was an ash tree that was taken out, and all the wood was stacked neatly by the road. And what comes along but a timber wagon? It's a truck, but it's called timber wagon. And all of this is going to be going to a local sawmill, getting highest value. Now, we had the Urban Wood Network on here. We just love the Urban Wood Network. They started up in Wisconsin when they had all the problems with the emerald ash borer. And one of the things that they had on their podcast or their website, they had a YouTube video of how to take down massive amount of trees that are killed by emerald ash borer. So you think that that's a big problem. Well, people can't pay $2,000 to have a tree removed, and there's thousands of trees to come down, right? So what they did was they used a harvesting machine that they would use regular forestry. And they brought this little thing in. It's a little thing, and it has an arm, and it takes off all the branches, and then it cuts the logs just the right size to fit a timber truck. And that's how they wound up starting the Urban Wood Network in Michigan and in Wisconsin, because they knew how to harvest the wood from their forestry programs to be able to take it to the sawmill. And now we're kind of benefiting from that catastrophic event and now using that wood processing idea here in the city of Philadelphia and not putting that timber into the waste stream, which is saving millions of dollars, but also keeping the carbon stored, but also has created an entirely new business of people who are hands-on workers that want to be creative and are creating all kinds of tables and wood flooring and chairs and all kinds of creative things besides kitchen and for charcuterie boards, and the list goes on, right?
And then you're also keeping that money in the local economy.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that people need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about local and global all the time. We need to be putting our arm out and bring it back and out and bring it back so that we can actually have a more sustainable planet, but also more sustainable for us as individuals and human beings, that we're kinder to ourselves and to each other and to our environment. And that's the only way it's going to happen. And I really think people like yourself, Jay, are in the front of helping people to get to that point. And it's only people who have a bigger vision that can actually sometimes see it, that they can help others to be able to see it.
As you're talking, this is something, so if you go back and listen to the episode with Hannah on my podcast later, you'll hear this ad nauseum because I spent like 5 minutes going on it. It's an idea I've become obsessed with now. So this arborvitae privacy hedge, right?
Yes.
That you said you've been staring at for years and been declined for years. First of all, nothing like a good monoculture, right? But
right.
What would happen?
Hey.
Just hear me out, tree people, if you're listening to this, especially if you're a business owner and you run, let's say, a tree care company, because I think you are in the position to say, no, I'm an arborist, I'm the expert, I can do this, okay? What happens if instead of that row of arborvitae, you replace that with a Miyawaki, right? Because then not only are you encouraging natives, you're increasing biodiversity, you're still giving that customer that privacy, but from a purely business standpoint, instead of just selling an install, you're selling an install plus 3 years of follow-up visits where you've got recurring revenue from this customer now too. So the local ecology wins, the planet wins because you're creating a pocket forest, your customer wins, they get privacy, and you win because you've got more money in your pocket now. Who loses here?
And the customer's happy. And the customer's always in the front, always in the forefront. It's not you thinking just about yourself. It's thinking about the customer. And this is where we have kind of gotten lost in this huge megalith of company greed without thinking of the customer in the end. And the case in point, this Arbovita, if we were to go back and say to the arborist who removed it, could you put in a Milwaukee hedge? Most arborists won't do it.
Precisely.
Most arborists aren't the ones who are planting. It's a landscaper who plants. And most of the landscapers don't know any of these techniques. And this is why tree people need to be involved.
So let me jump in because Basil mentioned in his interview, and I know that you guys had a back and forth about his hierarchy of planet, people, and profits. And he said, it was very much Basil. He said, I'm getting really tired of talking about money. I said, I'm losing interest. I know it's important, but it was refreshing to hear that context. But I also remember at his college years, he was going to go into the insurance industry. He's got a deep understanding. So Eva just mentioned the timber truck. And the other horror story I heard is when FEMA is on jobs like North Carolina, Florida, doing cleanup, there is no discretion, no discernment about this log is going here and this log. If it's a 115-year-old oak tree, it's still going on the back of the timber truck. It's still going to the dump to be burned. That's why, in terms of arboriculture 2.0, you wish that the tree care industry could separate itself from what is really construction cleanup, and forestry. It's those sky-high insurance rates that really keep the tree care business owner up at night, along with the workman's comp rate. Maybe that could be a future guest is someone that interfaces insurance to the tree care industry, because Basil said, the system is gamed. You would love to be doing a Milwaukee forest install, but you want to be doing it under landscaping insurance structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a conversation I was just having earlier this week with Marie Ambos. I can't wait for her product. I'm so excited for this to really hit market because it's brilliant. So go look up Marie and Trees ROI. But we were talking and she said, the problem is there's nothing written into the specs that says the root structure has to meet certain specifications. And all an urban forester, a city planner, whoever's writing these specs would have to do is just insert a line in there. And then all of a sudden, lowest bid comes in, and that's whoever has implemented her product, which is going to improve the longevity of trees. And Hal, I think it's a very similar situation, right? All that would have to happen is someone gets to FEMA, because I think there's a tension for FEMA specifically. You have to get people access to clean water and healthcare, and you have to do that all very quickly. And so there's no time to be discerning. Someone would have to do a case study and prove the value of, no, wait, let's separate that 115-year-old oak from the stuff that's going to the burn pile or to the chipper. And this is why. Because we can use this to remanufacture tables for the people that have just lost everything in these disasters, or we can use these pines that went down and those will become 2x4s when we rebuild the homes next year. You have to have somebody that really is on site, that has the knowledge to be able to direct the crews to do that. And then it's a matter of storage. And you just have to be able to prove that value to the federal government, I think. And that's, good luck if you can. I'm cheering for whoever can do it, but
I think it can happen. I think it can happen if there's a will. There has to be a will and a way. And once you have those two, you can do anything. And the idea of the government not being able to do it is ridiculous because there's too many smart people in the government. There's so many smart people in the government. They're brilliant people in the government that work for the government, and they could do it. It just means that the same old is not okay. It needs revamping. And that's where we need to have our change happen and keep relooking at systems. In other words, don't say that this is the way it's going to be forever. Let's just keep looking at it and let's keep changing as time goes on. What's more efficient? Let's keep moving ahead. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. And I'm really at this place personally, and someone else you introduced me to, Eva, that really like I've been frustrated for a couple of years now with this mentality that we find in the industry. And it wasn't until I was talking to John Perlin, and he told me,
yes,
he told me this story, interestingly enough, about ancient Venice. And so at the time of this recording, I'm living about 30 minutes west of Venice, and he tells this story where, and it's in his book. He's got the drawings that this guy took to the Venetian Senate. But the short version is there were clear cutting the land west of Venice. And when they would get rains, because Venice is built on a lagoon, all of that silt and all of that mud that no longer was held in place by these trees they were clear cutting was clogging the main harbor. And so this guy drew diagrams and drew like, here's why this is a problem. And he took it to the Venetian Senate and explained, if we keep doing what we're doing, our whole livelihood is threatened. And to their credit, the Venetians said, oh yeah, this is a problem. We got to stop that. And they put a ban on it. And for me, it was just like this light bulb moment. It's like, this is what I've been frustrated with. There's this mentality that what's good for government or what's good for business is somehow at odds with what's good for the planet. And no, everybody wins. Everybody can win. It's like the Miyawaki as a privacy hedge. It's like the Venetians forget it. There's this intersection where what was good for the planet was also good for business and industry, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. We just have to find the places where those intersections are and plant our flag there and say, this is what we're striving for. And that's, what I've been trying to okay, let me bring in guests that talk about this because I think I got family that, Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia roots, right? Like coal country. I don't want to be stuck in coal mining. So many of them just say, oh, well, this is what my grandfather did. And I'm not denigrating coal miners and their way of life, but I'm saying,
no,
but that's
not at all.
But that's not
at all.
But that's not viable long term, right? I don't want to get caught in this way of saying, well, this is the way we've always done horticulture. This is the way we've always done arboriculture, when there might be another way that's equally as profitable for the business owner, that's equally as effective for the end customer, but is also better for the planet. Let's just look for those things.
I'll give you a good example about that. When I was studying university on how to prune, we were doing flush cuts back in the 1970s. And in the 1980s, Mr. Shigo came along and Dr. Shigo said, let's take a look at the tree in a systematic way, which we weren't doing. And he says, let's take a look at the tree. Let's really study it. And let's say, a branch really looks like a tree if you take a look at it. And it looks like it's a tree within a tree, within a tree, within a tree. And if we were to change how we cut or prune, we could actually make a tree healthier when we're doing it. And that's where the branch collar came in, and the branch bark ridge. Changes a whole industry. It changed the entire industry of how everyone was pruning in 10 years' time. In 10 years' time, right? In 10 years' time,
everybody got the
painting of the tree bark, and painting it with tar, and that didn't need to happen. And then the bugs stuck to it, and it couldn't heal, and then the tree starts rotting from the kerosene that's in the creosote. All that kind of stuff. That is a perfect example. And in 10 years' time, the whole industry was turned around. We can do that with lots of industries, and everybody could still have a job.
Yeah. I work for, and go look them up. I think it was a wonderful company. I had a wonderful experience working there. I worked there for a number of years in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, called Tomlinson Baumberger. And one of the things I loved about working there.
What was it called?
Tomlinson Baumberger. Okay. Yep.
Tomlinson and Baumberger.
They did something really innovative. They had a guy that was in charge of their lawn care operations who was this forward thinking, let me play with everything. Let me figure out if there's a better way to do things kind of guy. So if you ever listen to this, Ryan, shout out Ryan Mason. But he was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so he went and found a product that was live culture bacteria. And the way you applied it, at the time, it was a liquid, and then they eventually figured out how to pelletize it. But what you were doing is you were improving the microbiome. You were improving the mycorrhizoa and the bacteria in the soil so that you could use less fertilizer, you could use less pesticide, you could use less fungicide, and still achieve the same results. And so they offered that as a line of lawn care. It was more expensive. And you know what? When we explained it to customers and we just said, hey, the difference between this and like our premium package that has all the other bells and whistles, you're going to get all the bells and whistles with it, but it's like a difference of like $3 a visit, $5 a visit. Which one do you want? More than half the time they took the one that was occasionally you get people, and whatever, that's their buying preferences. They said, no, I don't care, just give me the cheaper one. But a lot of people said, wait, I don't have to worry as much about my kids. I don't have to worry as much about my pets. I don't have to worry as much about the neighbor's cat. I don't have to worry as much about the water system, the water table. Yeah, give me that one. Give me that one for a few dollars. Because you think there's this perception too that customers are unwilling to pay for something just because it's more expensive. It's not true. People want to feel good about what they buy, right? It's about learning how to talk about those things in a way too. If you're legitimately doing things that are good for the planet, message me on LinkedIn. I will help you craft it. I will help you work on this just because I believe in it. Learn to talk about it in a way that people understand, but also frames it in a way like, hey, here's the benefit to you, to the planet. Yeah, people want to feel good. If I go to the store, I love Caesar salad, right? It's not Italian. It was actually invented in Mexico, but but I love Caesar salad. And so if I go to the store and, everything being equal, Ken's and Newman's Own are on the shelf together and they're the same price, guess what I'm buying? I'm buying Newman's Own because I know part of that is going to something that's a good cause and I feel good about buying it. Your customers are the same way if you're listening to this. They want to feel good about what they're buying. So if you can explain things to them in a way that they understand the benefit to the environment and why it's a little bit more expensive, they're going to do it. A lot of them will do it. Don't be afraid.
When I had my flower shop, somebody gave me the best advice. Never judge anyone's budget by your own.
Come on. That's right.
And so when people would come in to order flowers, I'd say, well, what kind of price range would you like to work in? And sometimes I was shocked, that they said, oh, they want to spend $500. And I was like, whoa, well, okay. That's fine, but we can do the most fabulous thing for $500. Or if they wanted to spend $100, at the time, the average price was $25 for a flower arrangement. Somebody says they want to spend $100. I'm happy. And I'm going to give you the best I could possibly find for you. And you are going to be so thrilled that you spent that money that you're going to come back here and spend that same money every time you come here. And that's the kind of thing that you never want to judge by your own pocketbook, especially if you're a cheap person.
Yeah, and it's going back to what Hal said too, right? Like if you have the experience too, you shouldn't be afraid of charging for it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to look at my carpenter and say, oh, well, I could go to Lowe's and buy the stuff for less than yeah, but I don't have the 20 years of building whatever I want him to build under my belt. That's what I'm paying for, right?
You don't want to devalue people. And that's what we do in our society. We devalue people because we want to feel better about what we're doing. And it's the wrong mentality.
I would go a step further than that and say, especially in the green industry, I don't think we necessarily devalue other people. You do. You're always going to have Chuck in a truck that says, oh, I can do it cheaper. That guy's overcharging you, whatever. You can't worry about them. What we tend to do, though, is we undercut ourselves because we want the work. Instead of saying, no, I know that job. If I'm going to pay my team well and I'm going to get paid myself well, and I'm going to do the job safely and meet my other financial obligations like insurance and equipment and depreciation on all those things. If I'm going to do that well, then this is what that job is worth. And then we compromise because someone goes, oh, really? Is it that much? You don't know what other quotes they've gotten. You might be the first person they're talking to. And the next 3 are going to come in 5 times what you had. As long as you're giving them what you believe is the best, fairest thing, don't worry about, and to your point, Eva, don't spend money as if it's yours. Tell them what you need to do the job the right way, according to what they've asked for. And if they say, okay, well, are there things in the scope of work that we've included that maybe you don't need done right now? Maybe we can do this over the course of 2 or 3 seasons. Don't compromise on the price. Maybe you start peeling back some of the, whatever kind of work. Yeah, some of the service. And then you've set up recurring work. Again, you've got some income coming in the following year because tree work in particular is a whole lot of one-off jobs usually. And that gets scary for me. I want money. I want to know something's coming in personally. So
I think the bigger tree companies have figured that out in terms of the one-off versus the renewing contract and being out on a property as a sales arborist once or twice a year, upselling, looking for projects. In fact, just to circle back to SingleOps, Jay, and I think we touched on, that It's stressful, particularly for the fella out there in the company car who has a daily quota of proposals that he has to get out. It can be as many as 8 to 10 a day. It's long days. You're pulling into Starbucks for a tall iced coffee so that you can work till 7 p.m. and you're not eating well. And, I'm speaking from things I've observed in the industry. You gain a lot of weight. So I guess all this to say, maybe someday in the future, you could also have a mental health professional talk about the stress. The only time it's come up, Eva will remember, we had Rebecca Johnson from Texas, from Austin, who's a big mover with women in arboriculture. And I thought, this is really cool because they were addressing in some of their Zoom workshops, the stress of some aspects of this industry. It's not just out there looking up and marveling at a sugar maple with its fall coloring. Its trucks are broken down. A foreman just walked off the job. I get stressed out just listening to these things. The client is irate with unreasonable expectations. And oh, by the way, you still have 3 more proposals to get out before 5:30 this evening and schedule tomorrow's job.
Yeah,
yuck.
Absolutely yuck, right? Again, this is part of why SingleOps exists. That person, so I don't want to make this a pitch for SingleOps, but there are things to address just about all of those things. So, you've got to get that proposal out. Well, guess what? In each proposal, you have an area to upload photos. So your crews can see exactly what trees are coming out from which side. With your phone now, you can take a picture and draw an arrow. This branch is coming out, whatever it is, attach those to the work order. You can even use an aerial photograph and do job site mapping. So you can highlight, these are the trees that are coming out. These are the 2 that are being pruned and removed. At Tomlinson Baumberger, our safety guy, who was a really very sharp man, he realized very quickly another excellent way to use that mapping feature that I don't know many other companies are using. And what he did was he used that and he insisted on it for every job that we proposed through SingleOps. Use the map and show the crew where to park. Safety issue.
Nice.
Here's where you have access to the backyard. This gate is wide enough for the equipment. You need to park the truck here, set up the cones here, so you're not blocking drivers. He required it on every job. Okay. So you can do all those things. And then also equipment tagging. So if you need a dingo or you need, let's say you've only got 2 chipper trucks, right? Okay. But you've got 3 crews out and one's got to do a takedown and just doesn't have the chipper. You have to go back and schedule that another day. You can actually, they have what they call a tagging feature. And you can tag, this job requires this equipment. So when you're scheduling them, you can go through, you're not double booking your equipment. You know exactly where it's going to be each day.
Wow.
And then scheduling jobs is done in just like you're using Google Calendars. You can literally just grab, this is a 4-hour job. It goes here. This is a 2-day job for this crew. It goes over here and you have them color coded and you're not double booking your crews. It's really, really designed to remove a lot of that stress. Now, there's stress that we can help with. So there's a GPS tracking feature. You got units that go on either your trailers, your trucks, or whatever you decide to assign them to, and then you can see where your crews are. So it's accountability for them, but also it's protection for them. The customer says, they didn't come back and do that thing. You can pull up the GPS tracking and say, actually, they were at your house for 2 hours today. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
That's interesting that you're saying that. I just was behind a truck that had that on it. It said, I'm being GPS tracked by my company. And I thought, it can be a little nerve-wracking, but...
Yeah, it sounds like a union protest, really.
But, the fact of the matter is to know where everything is. You're talking about parking where you should park. When I was studying in Europe, we had the environmental impact assessment, which was, where is everything going to be on the property? How are we going in and how are we getting out? Where is everything going to be housed? You cannot cross those lines. Otherwise, you're fined heavy, 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 heavy. And I'm talking several $1,000s a day for crossing those lines. You just don't make those mistakes. And then that area gets rehabbed after you leave. You aerate it, you do whatever you have to do, but you're not aerating the whole property because you've been all over the property and you park wherever you feel like parking. It creates all kinds of issues.
Yeah. And safety, right?
And safety, from a safety standpoint.
In 2016, I think it was, according to TCIA, of all, and this was the most recent data I could find when I was writing about it. Okay. So I just want to put that out there. So there might be more recent data out there, but according to TCIA, of all the reported incidents for arborists, 60% were fatal. 60%. You get hurt on a job, you're not going home.
Wow.
Right. So safety is something that we took really, really seriously. We wanted to make sure everyone went home with fingers and toes and limbs and heads intact. And so even stuff as simple, how silly would it be? How ridiculous would it be? You get all the way through the job, you're dropping these huge chunks of wood on the ground. You manage not to get injured, feeding the chipper, right? To get hit by a car trying to get back in the truck at the end of the day because you didn't have it parked in the right spot. What a silly way to get, it's those little things, this little attention to detail that SingleOps allows you to do to protect your team that I think also says to them, and it's one of the things that, honestly lends itself to a good company culture. Like people don't want to work somewhere that they don't feel like you care about their safety. If they don't care, if they feel like you don't care about that, they're not going to work for you long.
Quick story, a guy in a lift, he was putting up our Christmas decorations. He was supposed to know, how safety and everything. And it was nighttime. And my former husband was in charge. So there was a knock at the front door. And it was dinner time. So I said, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "Yes, we have a serious issue. Is Steve at home?" And I said, "Yes, he is." And I said, "Come on in." So he said, "We have a horrible thing that just happened." The guy was using his lift, hanging up the banners on the street, not familiar with the area, left his lift up to move to the next telephone pole, hit a train bridge. Guy in the lift fell out. He wasn't even strapped in and was instantly killed. This is our dinner conversation. And of course, I come from a safety household. My father was an OSHA inspector. I was beside myself. And here we've got the whole now, the family has to be notified and all this kind of stuff. It was just horrible. But safety is so critical. And we just ignore it a lot of times. We just
in the industry.
But OSHA doesn't ignore it. And I think they are keeping a really close eye on the tree care industry these days.
They are. They have to, because too many people are killed. It's like the auto industry when it first started, which my father was in. There used to be a sign on the front of the building. We only lost one man this week. It was horrible. And we heard about this at dinner time. This is what we heard as kids around the dinner table. My mother would say, "How was your day, Andy?" And he would say, "Well, we lost," they used to have, everybody had a nickname. "We lost Joe, whoever." And we were like, "What happened?" He got stuck in the press because the presses didn't have shut-off buttons. My father invented the shut-off button for presses because they would run 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good example. The safety equipment on chippers, for example. That's another one. If you feed it in the wrong way, you get sucked into it. That's why they have those mats there now on the chippers.
I had a safety inspector on the show, a good friend of mine. His name's Chris Long, a while ago. And he told a story. His father, they both worked in heavy industrial construction, like building bridges and stuff like that for a while.
Right.
And he said, I remember he was probably 18 or 19 years old, and his dad came home and was like limping, was walking around, was like clearly in pain. And he had an accident on the job site. And Chris was just starting in the industry. And he said, "Chris, I tell you what, no matter what they tell you, make sure you leave a hand free for Chris." Meaning, no matter what they ask you to do, if you are working in an elevated space, make sure you've got a free hand. Don't be carrying stuff with two hands, because if you fall, you need to be able to grab yours. And that's what had happened. He had fallen and hadn't been able to catch himself and landed and injured his back. And honestly, this is probably shame on us as an industry. That episode with Chris is one of my fewest downloaded episodes of all time, because no one wants to talk about it. But golly, when you need to talk about it and it's too late to talk about it, it's too late to talk about it, right? Like, it's not important until it is, right?
Although TCI magazine does not back down with their every issue has the updates on the back pages, and they're pretty brutal to read. But probably it's the ultimate safety wake-up call is to read them regularly.
And the biggest wake-up call is when you know somebody who it happened to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the biggest wake-up call, especially if it's someone close to you. That's the sad part.
I want to pivot away from safety in the time we have left, Jay, and just because I have a sense you understand the turf industry, how do you see it moving forward? What's it going to look like in 10, 20 years with its own issues in terms of carbon footprint and the market and the public that still wants the perfect green lawn? You have had a healthy sip of the Milwaukee tea, so you know that there's some options out there. Spitball that with me. What are we looking at?
Look, I think in terms of landscaping and tree care, I think you're going to see a bigger shift there before you see it with grass. Because the people that are practicing it now, like, oh, I'm going to let it be natural and I'm going to, I want the courage, the pollinators. A lot of times, this is just anecdotal, so take it with a grain of salt. A lot of times that's an excuse because they just don't want to mow their lawn. And it looks gross, right? Like I've literally walked past properties where it's like that grass is up to my knee and now it's habitat for rodents and snakes and all kinds of stuff I don't want up next to my house, right? And I don't want next to my property if I'm their neighbor. So there has to be a balance, I think. Part of the reason we mow lawns is not just aesthetic. It is to remove that habitat for those things we don't want in our houses, right? And so it's the same reason if you have hedges in front of your house, you have a hedgerow, you trim it back from the side of the house a few inches. So there's a barrier, there's a physical space in between that. If you let it grow right up against the side of the house, you're going to get bugs and you're going to get rodents and you're going to get all these other things. I think that the other thing that's going to have to kind of like take over first is we're going to have to get okay as a society. And maybe it starts in backyards first with, if you live in a place that has like native grasses, grasslands, like prairies and things like that kind of setup as an aesthetic first before it begins to move into, we have to change the cultural mindset on what quantifies as a beautiful, well-maintained lawn or well-maintained property. Because if you try to do that right now, your neighbors are going to be calling the city on you, and the city might just send somebody out to mow it all down, right? Just like Marie was saying, hey, we have to get municipal arborists on board and they have to rewrite the spec sheet. You have to do the same when it comes to city ordinances. You have to get your city councils on board and whoever makes these ordinances, maybe as granular as your homeowners associations, because they want everything uniform, right? So it's going to be a while. I think that's a much bigger hill to climb than it is with landscaping or with trees personally. That's my sense. And by the way, the thing that sticks in my craw about turf and turf maintenance is that it's been really easy to vilify True Green's an easy target because their customer service sucks and they really leave people with a bad taste in their mouth. But the fact is, them and lots of other at scale lawn care companies are far less responsible. They're far more heavily regulated in terms of the amount of product they're putting down, what goes into the watershed, all of those things, because the state will pull their license like that. The problem, take the Chesapeake, for example, right? In Maryland, you can only use 2.2 pounds of N per year, period, for the whole season. In lots of parts of Pennsylvania, I can speak to that one very well because I had to do stuff with the Department of Ag a lot. They'll yank your license real quick if they think it's tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars of fines, and then eventually they'll pull it if they think you're doing something wrong. Know who's not regulated? Because I did door-to-door sales for turf for a long time, and I can't tell you the number of times I made a sale because I walked up to a house and the guy's got 5,000 or 6,000 square feet of lawn, and he's putting 2 or 3 15,000 square foot bags of Scots on his lawn 4 times a year. I can't help but be less expensive. Yeah, the homeowners, absolutely. They don't know how to measure their property. Nobody's regulating it. And they're just dumping whatever the guys at Lowe's, who are not trained experts, who are not trained in turf care, whatever they recommend. They're just throwing that on the ground. And that's the stuff that's by far, in my opinion, more harmful to the environment. We need better regulation on homeowner use. Your companies are already regulated pretty strictly, especially in the East Coast. Let's get homeowners accountable too. And I think you'll see a big improvement in the environmental impact. That's my take.
Thank you for that. Yeah, a lot to think about. Yeah. Do you have a favorite tree?
Oh,
Jay? Do you have
how do you pick one, Hal?
a favorite group of trees? And I'm going to add to that, any trees in particular that you became enamored with in Italy?
You know, what I see most often in my neighborhood and in my city that I live in is actually the southern magnolia. The oldest specimen in Europe is in my city. It's at the botanical gardens, which are, by the way, the oldest botanical gardens for study in the world, I believe, but certainly in Europe, dates back to the 1500s. The specimen of southern magnolia that's here at the botanical gardens associated with the University of Padua is, I think the sign says 1757. So around the time of the Townsend Acts, okay, this thing was planted. It's remarkable. And I've got a picture next to it right after we got here. I was like, Stephanie, I have to go see this tree. But they're all over the city. I mean, 60, 70 feet tall, huge southern magnolias. Yeah. And so,
oh my goodness.
It's
wow.
Yeah, somebody
right on America,
somebody got them here, and the Italians fell in love with them, and they're all over the place. And so it's actually a lot of fun. But we also have redbuds. There's a street that we have to walk down all the time that's lined with redbuds. It's obviously beautiful. And spring and fall, there's a bunch of ginkgos. Italy's a weird place because you don't have a ton of public green spaces. It's like villas that have courtyards, right? And then there's green spaces there. So sometimes they're a little hidden, but in the places where they are public, there really is good diversity. But we get a lot of the same trees that we have in North America. So two of my personal favorites, I love the southern magnolia. I've always loved it. I don't know how you can walk by a magnolia in June and not stop and smell it. It's just the fragrance is overwhelming. But being a native son of Virginia, the American dogwood is another favorite of mine. Yakuzas are hardier, I get it, but but I prefer a good American dogwood. So those are two of my favorites. But I also worked on a palm tree farm for a long time. So how do you pick one, Hal? How do you pick one? I don't know.
Well, I think you've done a very commendable job.
Guys, thank you so much for the time. I've really had a lot of fun. I wasn't sure that where the conversation was going to go, but I really have appreciated the conversation. It's always fun, and I'm grateful that you made time for me today.
Yeah, very provocative and hopeful. And I'm realizing anytime I hear the word Miyawaki, it's like hopeful, optimism.
Hopeful.
Yeah, it's such a cool. It could be such a cool solution. I just need to get more. I'm going to be speaking at a landscape conference in January here. I'm hoping that I can have lots of these conversations. It's not what I'm presenting on. I'm presenting on the business topics that I'm become known for in the industry. I'll be speaking on employee recruiting and retention, but I will certainly be talking, bending some ears. trying to spread the gospel.
Well, thank you. We're really glad that you were part of our friendship through our podcast. You've brought a lot of interesting guests, helped us with a lot of interesting guests, and we look forward to continuing our relationship that way. We really appreciate it.
And Hal, I need to get you on sometime. I got to have you on the Green Industry Perspectives show, so we'll make that happen.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep, I'll reach out.
Thank you, guys.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The Plant a Trillion Trees podcast is edited by Andromedan Recordings in Hollywood, California.